Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest in the ASFP webinar series. We're going to be talking about adapting third-party certification schemes today. I'm going to wait for a few minutes while people are logging in and registering and watching our participants going up, and we'll start the presentation shortly. Right. Well, I think that's looking fairly steady numbers. So we'll get a manoeuvre. So good morning, everybody, or good afternoon even now, and welcome to this webinar on third-party certification schemes and how they're adapting towards golden thread going forwards. So my name's Andrew Taylor, and I'm joined today. We've got a guest presenter who's going to do a section towards the end of this. Andrew Hutchison from UKTC, a new ASFP member, testing and certificate UK testing and certification up in East Kilbride.
That's right. That's where we are.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And so we'll crash on and do this. I'm currently in a meeting room. I'm at another meeting down in London. So clients lent me a meeting room, so I'm going to have to canter through because I think I've got to be out of here by 1 o'clock. So it's our usual webinar format for those of you that are used to it. I'll do a quick welcome and we'll do the presentation. We've got questions. We've got a Q&A function on there. We've got a chat box function on there. And beyond that, we've also got polls as we go through, as we usually have. Question and answers as time allows. And I'm hoping we get some time for some, and we'll sum up and close at the end of it. And of course, as with all of our ASFP webinars, we're an hour webinar. We have a CPD accreditation for a one CPD 0.1 hour. If you want the certificate, info@asfp.org.uk. If you want that, if you're next door in the meeting room that I've just left and you're planning on watching this on catch up, I'm sorry, we can't give you a CPD certificate for that, but never mind. So we can only do it if you are here now live at noon on the 10th of July watching this as we present it. I'll put that information up on the screen at the end of the presentation as well. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about gateways and golden thread. We're going to look at improving building safety, and we're going to look at how we can get better information in terms of product and installer certification schemes to deliver better and safer buildings at the end of it. That's our primary aim. And as a result of that hopefully that takes me to poll question 1. And hopefully George is going to, in the office, is going to bring up for us the first poll question. And it's as if it by time-honoured tradition. So here we are. What's your involvement in passive fire protection? So it helps us just, if we do this, it helps us to understand who the audience for the day is and where we should be dealing with everything. Okay. And the answer is, bulk of you are from manufacturers, but a range of people across all of those different professions. Excellent. Right. Thank you very much. Okay. So we'll do a quick And hopefully if you're a regular at one of our ASFP technical groups or whatever, you will recognize this slide. In effect, there's 4 key areas that I think we need to improve on to help deliver safer buildings. We need better earlier design. We need our installer to improve the third-party certification and deliver more increased competence and increase the rigor on third-party certification for the installers. We need better and more relevant testing. We need to increase the rigor of third-party certification of products. And then beyond that, of course, when we get to the actual, what we're actually interested in is safer building, which is the installation, and that's obviously more detailed record keeping. So, quick few notes, a quick canter on how we get to where we are today, of course. Building Safety Act was published in May 22, Royal Assent, at Royal Assent then thereafter, before, and there's the implementation from spring towards the middle of this year of all the stuff that comes from it to help deliver safer buildings, to enact the 53 recommendations from the Hackett report. The last tranche of secondary legislation was August last year. It said it was meant to be finished by mid-2024, but obviously with the general election that we've just had, got a bit in the way and delayed some of that. So there are bits and pieces of this that were meant to have been finished by now that haven't been. You should be aware of the fact that, of course, the HSE is our new building safety regulator for high-risk residential buildings. They're interested, they've got the new gateway procedures, they've got registrations of existing buildings, and they're doing safety cases of that. And with the new laws on the duty holders that are all in place, and this is all now fully established, has been since October last year. HSE is also responsible for safety and performance of all buildings. They've taken over the responsibility for drafting ADB and the likes, and they're promoting the competence of those working on all buildings through the Industry Competence Committee. And you should be aware of the fact gateways, and this is the gateway slide that hopefully many of you will have seen before. You know, Gateway 1's been live since September 2022. Gateway 2 and 3 went live October 2023. So if you want to now build a high-risk residential building, i.e. more than 7 floors, more than 2 occupancies, you need to go through the Gateway 2, Gateway 3 process. Gateway 2 is full plans, permission to construct. Gateway 3 is a review of the building against those full plans, permission to occupy. One key point there is there's no change to fundamental legal requirement. You had to build a safe building before, you still have to build a safe building now. So we haven't changed the fundamental legal requirement in there. And the guidance on what's involved in Gateways 2 and 3 is out there. It's been out there from HSE for a while. Remember that when you get into the construction, you need the full design. And once you get into the construction phase, the idea is that the construction phase gets much simpler in that you've got a full design and you should just be able to build it. There shouldn't be the need for major changes, which is a stop and get it agreed with HSE, which includes things like changing compartment size and change to structural models. The more worrying thing for me was the notifiable changes where HSE must be informed, but you can proceed anyway, which included things like changing the size of a builder's workhold, changing the size of a service penetration. Well, that's the sort of thing that happens on site regularly at the moment. So you need to make sure that you need to plan it better. And the final check at Gateway 3 is demonstrate you built what you planned. It's going to be the key thing. So there's going to, obviously, if you look at this, there's going to be an increasing demand for records of design to prove, and that you can then compare up against the records of what you built. So there's going to be an awful lot more pressure on what's done within that design process and that construction process in terms of what's recorded to enable you to verify as we go through. I'm hoping that, and I'm looking through at the list of names on the participants in front of me, many of you will be already all too aware of the fact that the existing requirements for how you record information is laid down in a thing called Regulation 38, tucked away at the back of ADP. But one of the challenges with Reg 38 is, in effect, it doesn't work. It's never worked. It's there and it demands that you should do this, but how many times do you go to a building that's 5, 6 years older and the handover of building and fire safety information, if it happened, that information's been completely lost. So the idea is that the golden thread was proposed. It's more detail. There's more detail and more information in the golden thread than there is currently in Reg 38 requirements. And it's got some regulatory teeth behind it. Because if you haven't got your golden thread information, your on design at Gateway 2, you're not going to be able to build it. And if you haven't got your golden thread information at Gateway 3, to prove that what you built is what you said you were going to build, you're not going to be able to occupy that building. So all of a sudden now, golden thread is proposed. It's got more detail in it, and it's got the teeth behind it. What is the golden thread? You know what? I'll hopefully you've all seen the points there, and I'm not going to say too much about it because I'm aware of the fact that I think this is one of Andrew's slides later on. But let's just say that bold, read that bold text at the bottom. Golden thread should be assurance the evidence captured of the bill is of sufficient quality so that if somebody wants to, at a later stage, to review a compliance decision that was made, you've got enough information to verify or not whether that compliance decision is correct. Hopefully it will add value to the building. It will deliver a safer building, and it will keep the building safer for longer. Key thing with it is the onus is on the client to collate it and submit it. And the client's going to want to, because as we say, inadequate no permission to construct or no permission to occupy. So the client's going to want proper the ultimate end client, that a building owner is going to want that sort of information. But it drives responsibility onto the client, and the client is going to have to submit it as part of the Gateway 2s and Gateway 3 reviews. And it's not just golden thread going forwards, is not just for new relevant buildings, but existing relevant buildings also need to go back to know what's in the building, and not knowing what you've got is a risk which needs to be considered in the safety case. And you can make mitigation whilst you're trying to work out what it is, but for an existing high risk resi building, there is a requirement for a safety case that you should have registered it already, and once that's registered, there's a requirement for a safety case to keep that, so that you can do that, you can keep occupying it, and you review that continually. And that safety case must address the question, what are the building safety risks in the building? How are you managing those on an ongoing basis so that you can tell that it's safe? The challenge, obviously, with this is that even in buildings built since 2006, when Reg 38 came in, have got a lot of missing information. And this is a slide I've used before. Here's our 10 paint inspector. He's gone to a building that's about 10 years old, and there was no specification information available about what that particular inch-messed coating system was, what was applied, and how it had been provided to meet the requirements of that structure. We haven't got a design code, we haven't got a critical temperature, we haven't got a product name, we haven't got a specification, private top coat, etc. It's nigh impossible when you're doing that. We can do a data dry film survey, but we don't know. We're trying to second guess and find all that information to help that. So you know, what are you going to do? How are you going to determine that what the system supplied and what it is? So we hope that with Gateway 3 and Golden Thread through the gateways, there will be an increased level of stuff and information being recorded. Dame Judith is worried that diverse digital systems will make this difficult to achieve. And I think one of the things this highlights is the need for the definition of what the inspection of the whole thing will look like, be well defined in contracts and in a code of practice, as well as the whole digital recording of what's been done, how it's been done, the design of it, the product certification of it, the assessment of the product to meet the design requirements, and who installed, who decided, who designed, who installed, and proof of competence of those people. So a massive body of evidence that you will need to validate these things. This is not going to be a simple thing for the faint of heart. So as a result, one of the things that we've done in ASFP, of course, and I'm sure many of you are aware of this already, we've set up TG9, a group to look at the key factors for what we need to record. There are lots of people that are at the moment are producing golden thread guides of about 5-10 pages long that tell you all the stuff about what golden thread is meant to be, and we'll give you the definitions, stuff that was on the slides, and the stuff that Andrew's going to cover in a few minutes. What we're trying to do is drill deeper into this, and actually what credibly looks like, what level of detail we need to record for design, what level of detail we need to record for installation and inspection to verify compliance. And we're looking at that. We're looking at that, and also how that information is shared. Okay, that takes me to our standard 3-wheel thing, and I'll be honest. This is our standard model, and one of the things that we're talking about in terms of construction product. I'm not going to do design in this webinar. We've done design recently an awful lot of times, and we're talking about more involved earlier design, better design recording. But in terms of this, we were talking about how third-party certification, and that's third-party product certification, third-party installer certification. So in terms of product, our main area is product certification, and how it's an area that we're looking at, how we can do stuff to increase the rigor of product certification going forwards, so that the third-party certification information that underpins the golden thread is better. It's what we need it to be. And of course, you're all aware of this particular slide. This is one of our pets things. From an ASFP standpoint, you've got 3 things that you can do with product. You could just self-declare, you could get a test report, or you could get the third-party certification. And I'm hopefully preaching to the converted, so I'm not going to go to spend too long on this. You know, if it's self-declaration, there's nothing to say that it's been designed to, which is, how can you design something to a test standard? You know, was it tested? Who tested it? Was the test impartial? And so obviously, if it's a self-declaration, there's no, you are taking some the manufacturer at their word in terms of product performance. If it's a test report, it's only a snapshot in performance. You don't know whether the sample that was tested is representative of what you're actually going to get at the moment. Has it been changed any in the period since it was tested? Has there been a change to the raw materials? Has there been a change to the design? Has there been a change to one of the components? And there is obviously self-declaration is a massive risk. Test report only is a lesser risk. And so people sometimes say that I have a test with a test report, say they have a certificate when they don't have a test report. But the third-party certification is the route that's underpinned by not factory production control checks. It's underpinned by an auditor sampling at the start of testing, witnessing the testing, validating all that as you go forwards, and making sure that the product that's supplied today is the same as the product that was tested, and therefore that's the route to confidence. And that's why, for as long as I've been involved in ASFP, which feels like at times like it's been forever, that we've lobbied for third-party certification when we were working for ASFP manufacturer members. Third-party certification has been a key cornerstone of fire-resistant products, has been a key cornerstone of the ASFP. We were hoping that we'd see something in construction products regulations coming forward as a result of Building Safety Act that would allow us, that would take us in the general direction of making some form of third-party certification for products mandatory at some point in the near future. There was meant to be something coming out before Christmas, then it was coming out in the first half of the year. And obviously, this will be the most significant thing when it comes. It's underpinned by the Morell and Day report, but as yet, it has yet to arrive. We were hoping that there are three different things that we want to see resolved in terms of construction products regulations that third-party certification will ultimately have to deal with. One is the fact that the UK system's based on a right across the EU CPR passed into UK law when at the point of Brexit. Government now under Building Safety Act's powers of change and the desire post Grenfell, but hasn't done it. We know that the EU regulations on this are changing as well. That's a subject for another webinar another day. And the UK system's based on CE marking, changing over to UKCA marking at some point in the future. It's meant to be the middle of next year, 30th of June, but we've not seen any draft legislation on that. And we know that building regulation guidance still has the historic BS 476 based testing in there, and there's been consultations about taking it out and replacing it with the newer BSEN test standards. And you would have thought that logically one solution could sort all of these out. Probably not, probably two, maybe three. But these are the sorts of things that are the issues still to be resolved with construction products post Grenfell that will hopefully make some form of mandatory CE marking. Of course, the challenge is that prior to over Christmas and early New Year, DLUC were telling us that their announcement on what we were going to do, how we were going to deliver construction products going forwards was nearly there, and we were going to get a white paper or a green paper or a paper of other color, some other color, I can't remember. We were going to get that out. That was going to come, but they went into silence, broadly speaking, in about January, February. Political waned before the election was called, and we've now got the new government, but they're obviously only a few days into post. And who knows whether it's not an unimaginable scenario that this is something that's really difficult. It's really complicated. It's got a lot of moving parts. It's not something that the politicians can easily get their heads around, and it's not equally a big vote winner opinion leading type thing. The other thing is, and I don't know whether you picked this up yesterday, but DLUC is being rebranded back to MHCLG again. So that slide, I did contemplate changing that slide from DLUC back to MHCLG at the top this morning on the train down, but I've left it as it stands because we were talking to DLUC at the time. But they're now MHCLG, and who knows? Bearing in mind that the minister at the top of that particular tree is Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, we may even end up back at the office of the Deputy Prime Minister at some point in the near future. You know, who knows where we end up with that. But we will obviously, as ASFP, we will keep an eye on that, and we will let you know just as soon as we hear something. Beyond that, construction products testing. Hopefully many of you have seen this before. There isn't really one of the challenges for us with construction products testing is our system is a read across of the EU system. It's about freedom of movement of goods and not necessarily about testing of safety of construction products. It's a system that's designed so that a manufacturer in France can test in Spain and sell in Germany, and they're all speaking the same common language, even though they've got different building regulation requirements. And it's a very, very complicated system. I was thinking about taking this out, but one of the key points of the things that we need to consider is the fact that this is a very complicated system, and it's based on CE marking, and not all CE marks are the same. There are many different ABCP systems, attestation and verification of constancy of performance. It's a very complicated process, and there are different ABCP systems, and those different ABCP systems mean that the CE mark per se, or the UKCA mark, has different levels of rigor attached to it, dependent upon which of these systems that you see on the screen, which of these systems it's gone through. In most of our systems are based on ASFP system 1. For most of our product families, ASFP system 1. The manufacturer does the factory production control, but when you look at the initial type testing, sampling and testing is done by the third party conformity assessment body. The production, there's an initial inspection of production, and there's audits of the production process on a regular basis. And that's the area where the vast majority of our things work. If you look at Build a Safer Future, Dame Judith would like us to get to 1+. And the difference with 1+ is that you've got some form of some form of ongoing or production sampling, some form of ongoing audit testing of some description. And one of my challenges to the technical groups at the ASFP is define what that is so that we can increase that, and we can voluntarily increase to system 1+ with a view to presenting that to MHCLG as now is, and seeing if we can get that written. And that gives us a greater level of conformity, greater level of rigor in our third-party product certification, okay, to help that. And this was one of the things that the Morell and Day report, when we were talking about, these were the things that Niall and I pulled out in the Morell and Day report. There were recommendations of things that industry should do. And the first one is simplify ABCP, increase the rigor behind it. So that's one of the things that we want to do. As ASFP, we'd like to work with everybody in that chain, with our manufacturers and with our test and cert bodies to do that and to set one level of an increase where it's increased rigor. Devise a certificate in support of the declaration of conformance and a standard set of documents, so that when we're doing that within TG certification, so that our cert bodies have a common form, and we'll do that to help people so that it's understandable, and the certificates hopefully become easier to read. We're adopting and promoting CCPI to our manufacturer members and saying that, and our aim is that within this we're working towards a thing called the pass mark, which is an increased level of rigor for product certification, which has these 4 elements of it: a labeling and traceability framework based on the product certification, and that will give us, again, better records, better and hopefully easier to understand records of what product performance looks like. That takes us towards an increased rigor and a better, hopefully a more robust certification process for that. And I said, just a quick mention of CCPI. CCPI is a code of information for manufacturers that their product information is correct, it's up to date, it's accurate, it's unambiguous, and it's not misleading. They've been running for a while. They're now expanding. We're promoting this as part, and one of our things of our pass mark will be we've signed up to this particular thing. It's not, I would say, because I have read recently a couple of people writing saying CCPI was more important than third-party certification. It's not. Third-party certification is important. CCPI says that a manufacturer won't abuse that third-party certification. That picture there, there's a dozen companies represented on that picture, and of those, a dozen, 6 are ASFP members. So that's a good thing. Okay, that takes me nicely and neatly to poll question 2, George. I hope. So, and that, bearing in mind what I've just said, this is a quick straw poll. What do you think the appropriate level of ABCP for passive fire protection products and systems is? And it's a single chance. Okay. An overwhelming majority, interestingly, 63% of you said 1+, including the regular audit testing. 18% say system 3. That's a really interesting answer. Only 9% of you want going with. I thought we might have seen a more was hoping for more of a split between 1+ and 1. That's good. Thank you very much, folks. That helps. I will use that number at some point in the future, no doubt. Right. I'm going to quickly do installers and then hand you over. So you are aware of our standard. I hope if you've seen these before, we should let PFP systems be installed by with no bar to entry for PFP installers, not enough inspection enforcement, and basically I need a bread knife, a mastic gun, and a white van. All the colours of van are available, and off we go. We need to improve that, and one of the reasons, obviously, is that building things is very, very complicated. And construction errors are often not easily seen because they're hidden away. You hope it's not a passive fire issue, but you will be aware of that on the screen. That's Oxgan's primary from when the wall fell down because the wall ties hadn't been installed properly, and that led to a whole review of public-private partnership funded schools and buildings up and down the country, and found that there were lots and lots of errors. The one on the left is it's compartmentation. It was in Oxgang. There's no plasterboard above the fire door, creating a large compartment. There's no fire stopping. The fire can just go down the corridor. The fire door was no good. And this was another high school beyond that where they just punched a hole for it to get a flue through, and the duct hadn't been fire stopped, and a compartmentation breach exists. And that's just a couple of the examples that we have. So ASFP again lobby for installer certification. Only staff whose competence has been evaluated should be used. They should be installing third-party certificated products as and when, and they should be installing third-party certificated schemes, not mixing and matching. They must be recording the jobs, and the jobs are then to make and with the cert bodies, and the cert bodies audit to make sure that the processes are being followed. And within that there should be a random site inspection of what the installer is doing, and that's an inspection of the installer's processes rather than the actual work, rather than the actual quality of the work that's being done. It's an inspection of the processes per se. One of the things that we're trying to do now within that again is drive up the rigor of that, and drive up the sort of the things that are involved, and increase the quality of third-party certification of installers. One of the areas where we're doing this, and I hope you've seen this before, and if not, there are webinars out there on the ASFP website that will explain in far more detail than I'm going to do today the competency pathway. We want to use this to drive up the competence of the individual installers and the competence of the organisation installers, of the organisation, how the organisation is managing its people, as a way of driving the competence and the installation accuracy. And beyond that, we've got work going on within our TG, our certification TG, looking at defining increased rigor for the installer certification schemes, setting a minimum of number of site inspection audits, use competence requirements linked to the ASFP, so the competence framework you've just seen, and the competence recording that the ASFP are developing, and hopefully 100% contract digital recording of work done, which again, that links in then to the golden thread. So you can see all these things are coming together in a holistic way to bring everything forward. That takes me to poll question 3. Okay, George. Right. 9% as an installer, 18% as a contractor, 2 owners, 4%. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much for that, folks. At this point, I'm going to hand over, Andrew. I'm going to shut up for a few minutes and I'll let you do the next few slides. I will pay attention because I'll drive the slides for you, mate. So away you go.
Thanks, Andrew. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, my name is Andrew Hutchison. I'm the head of technical services at United Kingdom Testing and Certification. We're a testing and certification body. For the next 15 minutes or so, at least I'll try and keep it to that, we're going to explore how we must adapt existing product certification schemes to evolve and support the principles of the Golden Thread. Before we dive into the specifics of third-party certification, though, I thought it was appropriate just to briefly review the Golden Thread. I know we're probably all sick to death of it by now. You know, as fire safety professionals, you will have heard the phrase the Golden Thread banded around for years now, and no doubt you're all well versed in it and the consequences, etc. So I'll keep it brief and just say that in a nutshell, the Golden Thread is all about the right people having the right information at the right time. But what does that practically mean if you're a product manufacturer? What steps do you need to take in order to manage your risks effectively? I've put up on the slide there the guidance on the Health and Safety Executive's website, which is quite useful in thinking about what practical steps we must take. And essentially, it says that information must be digital, it must be secure, available to those who need it, at the time that they need it, and presented in a way that they can use it. Next slide, please, Andrew. Against this backdrop, UKTC, we've recently conducted a review of third-party certification provision across the passive fire industry in the UK. And we are presenting 4 recommendations in this webinar that we think will improve the third-party certification provision, particularly from a product standpoint. These are that documentation must become digital, marking of products must be clearer and less ambiguous, scheme rules must be accessible and understandable, and there must be a traceable chain of evidence that links the whole thing together. Next slide, please, Andrew. The first recommendation then is that documentation shall be digitally accessible, version controlled, and verifiable through a single authoritative source. Our review underscored the critical need for a streamlined approach to certification documents. Currently, these documents are scattered across multiple platforms, a diverse number of platforms, whether that be certification bodies' websites, manufacturers' websites, other types of authorities like UCAS's website, which leads to inefficiencies and potential discrepancies in the information that's available to stakeholders. We think that a better approach would be to consolidate this information digitally on a certification body's website, and this would act as a single source of truth, offering ease of access and guaranteeing consistency across all the different communication channels that are out there for this information. Next slide, please, Andrew. Our second recommendation is that certification marks should be designed in such a way that the least competent stakeholder can identify where the product came from and what performance it has. And to achieve that, we make marking clear and unambiguous. Our review discovered that there were significant issues with how certified products are marked. And as an example, I put an image on the screen there of a particular mark for it's a product mark for a fire door. We presented this recently at a trade show to a relatively educated audience, and only a handful raised their hand to signal that they were familiar with the marking. And when asked to keep their hand raised, if they could identify from the image what performance the product had, all but one person kept their hand in the air. This lack of clarity is particularly concerning when you consider the audience was an educated one. So to address this, UKTC proposed that product labels include as a minimum the name of the voluntary third-party scheme that the product complies with, a reference to the product certificate, the manufacturer's details, so that we can contact them in the event of an issue or a question, a unique identifier such as a serial number, so that further down the line we could reasonably identify when the product was made and what it was made from via the contact details of the manufacturer, the product's performance or classification, for example, FD30, EI30, E30, whatever it might be, and reference to the handling, installation, maintenance, and disposal guidance is also critical. Next slide, please, Andrew. Our third recommendation is that scheme rules must be publicly available, written in plain English, and independently verified. In the case of the UK, that's UCAS at the moment. Our investigation revealed that many certification scheme rules are inaccessible. You can't very easily look them up online and find them. And they can often be lengthy documents which are complex and difficult to interpret. In fact, we experienced several instances where interpretation of these schemes differed between colleagues from the same certification body. We also found that there were discrepancies in the requirements across the spectrum of certification bodies for the same product types and even the same performances, which just adds another layer of confusion to this already complex landscape, and rendering the stakeholders unable to sort of effectively benchmark one scheme over another for the same product. UKTC proposes that a more collaborative approach is required between certification bodies, industry, and regulators to establish a unified minimum standard for voluntary third-party certification schemes. And by working together, I think these stakeholders could develop clear, accessible, and consistent scheme rules and ensure that stakeholders at all levels of competence can understand and navigate their way through the certification process and be able to effectively benchmark one scheme offering against another on merit. Next slide, please, Andrew. Our final recommendation that we're presenting emphasizes the importance of establishing a traceable chain of evidence for any claims that are made about the performance of a product or its compliance with any particular standard or regulation. Simply presenting a one-page certificate, it falls short of assuring that the accountability and transparency that is required by the golden thread, which Andrew's covered earlier in his presentation. UKTC proposes that manufacturers should be required by these certification schemes to provide a certificate that not only attests the compliance of the product, but also includes references to the documentation and supporting evidence that demonstrates the performance of the product beyond doubt. This includes providing access to test reports, field of application reports, classification reports, installation and handling, maintenance documents, whatever it may be. The simplest way to achieve this would be to hyperlink these documents on the certificates, making it available to the viewer instantly. By making this information readily available, we enhance the transparency, accountability, and confidence of these certification schemes, and can really ensure that they're adding value to the buildings that we all live and work in every day. Next slide, please, Andrew. So just to recap then, in summary, today's short but sweet presentation, we've highlighted that there's a crucial role that third-party certification holds in delivering the principles of the golden thread for construction products. However, it's also evident that third-party certification must adapt and approve to truly align with the golden thread framework. We've seen how transitioning to a more digital space ensures that stakeholders have access to reliable information, which will consistently benefit the life cycle of the products that make up the buildings that we all live and work in. We've learned how clear product markings empower stakeholders to make well-informed decisions about products that make the buildings that we all live and work in. We've seen that accessible and easy to understand scheme rules are essential for stakeholders to navigate the certification process smoothly and effectively benchmark different schemes. And finally, we've learned that establishing a traceable chain of evidence is vital for demonstrating compliance and building trust between building occupants and industry. By implementing these recommendations, we can enhance the effectiveness and credibility of third-party certification and ensure that it is adding value to our industry. And in this way, we can foster a future where trust, transparency, and integrity forms the foundation of our built environment. Next slide, please, Andrew. And the final slide from me today, just before I hand back to Andrew, I just thought I'd take the opportunity to give you a brief introduction to UKTC Ensure, which is UKTC's new product certification scheme, which we are launching later this year. We've been developing UKTC Ensure to address each of these recommendations we've covered today. At its heart, UKTC Ensure integrates with the Golden Thread framework, ensuring that all the product information is maintained digitally and securely, and guaranteeing that the right people have the right information at the right time. There's some information on the screen, which I'm not sure if you will get a set of these slide decks away with you, but if not, there's a QR code on the screen that I'd encourage you all to scan just now, which will take you to a web page where you can learn more. Hit subscribe and you'll be signed up to updates so that you'll be the first to know when we launch. Thanks for your attention today. We're all excited here at UKTC about the future of third-party certification, and we're looking forward to play our part and take our responsibility in making the built environment a safer place.
Okay, Andrew, thank you very much. And I was just going to make a point saying with the effect of there aren't any questions and answers, but as you finish talking, the good news is you brought two questions. We've got two questions there which we can deal with at the end. Right, I'm going to quickly canter through this last little bit because I need to be out of here in about 10 minutes. So one of the questions, I should have changed that one. D-Look wants us to improve. Well, I know D-Look wanted us to improve. What I'm assuming MHCLG will still want us to improve the actual performance of the installation. We talk about design, we've talked about product, we've talked about installer, but it's the installation that's the important thing. So is just doing all the stuff we're doing with those three enough, or should we be doing more? And one of the key things, it's very interesting, that the two questions that have just come up, just getting into One of the things I want to do at some point in the near future, I think this will probably end up being the subject of our next webinar, is look at the extent of inspection limits, either up for internal and record the extent of recording of installation done within within a construction by the contractor in themselves and or by a certification body validating the records and maybe even a third party inspector checking as a function of that. And I think there's got to be a role for that, and that's something I want to work on with our installers and certification bodies and the tier ones over the coming weeks, months, to work out what that looks like. And I have an idea, I have an embryo flow chart in my mind. This was the first one that I typed up some time ago. And what I want to do is I want to take that and build on that going forwards and come up with that and also address the fact that there's a disconnect in there. So so that the manufacturers and the test stamp and the are involved as well in reviewing the design information. And so there's a whole body of things that we need to do to actually get to the validation of compliance decisions at the end of it. And that takes me nicely and neatly to poll question number 4, please, George. Okay. What level of inspection should we have? Should them? No, I apologise, but I've typed that wrong. It should say contractors in this record. So the question 1 should be, what level of inspection should contractors record to pass on to the client? And the question 2 was, should client and principal contractor appoint a third party inspector to validate contractor records? At least I got that right, 1 out of 2. Right, George, have we got a number? Doesn't make sense. 100%, 63. Lower level as defined in industry guidance, 22. 10% should be a mandatory figure. And should the client or principal contractor appoint a third-party inspector? 85% of you say yes. 4% of you say no. 10% of you not. All right. Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Last couple of slides. I just thought, to wrap up, I thought I'd put this is some of you will have seen me do this before. This is a slide that Niall and I came up together with when Dame Judith Hackett wrote Building a Safer Future. We looked at these were the key recommendations in Building a Safer Future. And if you look at that, the block that's in the blue is the stuff that says get design right, get the gateways right, and do that. And that's the stuff that's in the blue about that is stuff going forwards that we need to fix. The stuff below in the orange box, that's all the stuff we've been talking about today. So we've been talking about this and working out and working towards this and trying to understand how we deliver this now since 2018. I think basically what I'm trying to say to people is the time has come. We kind of know what we need to do. Now what we need to do is get on with it and do it. Okay. That takes me to quick Q&A, and I'm aware we've got three questions that have landed with us at the moment. The first question was, is there a role for inspectors to verify correct installation of products? And I think I would like to say that arrived, and my next slide probably hopefully covered it. Absolutely. I think we need to set a level of inspection that the installer should do, and I think that should be 100%. And we're willing to talk within our ASFP contractor group about that and have that discussion with them that should be 100%. And once we've done that, and then there should be a role for some form of third-party inspector, may be appointed by the the client, the principal contractor, to verify that that's been done. I also think that there should be some trade-offs in terms of what that inspection looks like, what the client's inspection looks like if you're using a third-party certified installer. Okay, that's that one. He says the next one, Andrew, I'll let you answer this one if I may. As a fire door inspector, I'm often frustrated that manufacturers of fire doors will not share test certification. If we're wanting to improve standards, it's essential that all parties allow access to test certification.
Sure. It's a crucial point. Obviously, access to the test reports or any information that relates to the performance of the product is fundamental to maintaining high standards of installation or correct installation methods. We recognise this challenge that you're facing as an inspector or an installer. Indeed, they have the same challenges, I suppose. And it's precisely one of the one of the things that we've tried to address with UKTC Insure by developing the centralized digital vault. And we can keep this sort of information, and we will mandate some of this information as part of our scheme that it is available. That is a challenge for some product manufacturers because there can be some sensitive information in these documents. However, there are ways around that, ways around how we deal with those sensitive bits of information. But yeah, I absolutely agree that it's essential that this information is available to fire door inspectors, installers alike, in order to do their job.
I think from my point of view, I agree with that. I think one of the things is with third-party certification, we should mandate that the data should be published on your website, on the certification body's website, and free for access for anybody. That should be that's an important part of third-party certification, as far as I'm concerned. I apologise. There's two more questions still here, and one of which is without a mandate for certification, is it voluntarily doomed to fail? I hope not, and I equally hope that what we're doing is we're bringing standards forwards to try and prepare stuff in advance of government giving us a mandatory sort of certification system. And the fourth question just landed is similar to the third one. I'll do some follow-up answers to those after the effect, but I apologise because I'm in a meeting room and I'm about to get thrown out of it. So with that in mind, with the fact that it's now just turned 1 o'clock, I'm going to have to end the webinar and say thank you very much to Andrew for presenting. As a reminder to everybody, the webinar's got a CPD. It's info@asfp.org.uk if you want a CPD certificate. And a quick bit from ASFP telly time. We've got an academy session on the website, free for members, about utilising BIM technologies coming up. And the next event that we've got is our London seminar, and that's available through our website. Everybody, thank you very much for attending. I hope it's been useful to you all, and no doubt see you all soon. Thank you very much. Andrew, thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.